Hey guys, Delani here. I wanted to record a little video for you of me ratting at a Tempest for a couple of reasons. One, I see a lot of people ratting that aren't really sure what kind of fit to use. They're new to ratting, maybe they don't want to invest in an expensive ship like a rattlesnake, but they still want to make some reasonable ISK. And also because you don't need that expensive of a ship to rat. So as you can see from this fit here, feel free to pause the video and look back. I'm just using a straightforward fit. The only fancy piece of equipment on the whole thing is my repper, but you can even just get away with a large armor repper, as you'll see. So first off, my ratting approach is a little bit different than what I see with most people. I find that ratting at range, something in a rattle ship, 40, 50, 60, 70k away, is kind of the norm. This isn't a bad approach. It sort of mitigates applied DPS. But mine's a little different. I actually go right to 0 and rat there. So I generally pick sites where rats spawn at 0 or close to it, which is almost always havens or Forsaken hubs, where I'm landing in now. Forsaken hubs are a little bit easier, but havens work just as well for what we're doing with this fit. So first thing I do is I start approaching the center, dead center of the group of rats, and go about 20 kilometers out from the beacon. So you can just hover over the beacon to keep track of how far out you are, and then once you hit about 19 kilometers, just hit control space, stop your ship, and you'll be pretty much dead center where the rats will spawn. It's always to sort of the bottom left a little bit of the next asteroid. It's in line with that. So what I'm doing here right now, I'm just sort of applying as much DPS as possible to the battleships on field. I'm sort of approaching them. My transversal isn't very good at this point, so I'm basically taking shots to the face pretty hard. But it's not such an issue. As soon as the first couple of battleships drop off, it doesn't really matter. And this fit's sort of meant to tank, right in the face anyway, so it's pretty good that way. So in a Forsaken hub, the first wave is really important because it lets you know what kind of site this is going to be. If there are 4 battleships on field in the first wave, you're going to have a bit more of a DPS intensive site. If there are 3, it's going to be a little bit lighter. The 4 battleship sites are nice because the payout's a little bit higher, but the 3 works well too. As you can see at this point, I am slowing down my ship. I've reached about 19 kilometers out, so I hit control space and slowed down my ship, so I coast to about 20, and that'll put me in that nice perfect range for ratting. So the idea here is to rat without moving my ship. So what this does is actually drop the rat's transversals down to 0 or pretty close. So if you actually look at this next wave, the battleships especially, the Dreadlords that orbit me at 17 kilometers out, and then the Tyrants that orbit at 49 kilometers out, they basically just burn straight away from me. And so the transversal drops pretty much to 0, which makes it really easy to hit them with full DPS. And that's really what this fit is all about. It's about as much DPS as I can possibly muster, so my tank is really minimal. The cap isn't really there. It's just enough to get me through the site, which I've sort of practiced and perfected. And then I have 2 tracking computers that are sort of tracking optimized, and then 2 that are focused on optimal range. So the tracking, obviously that gives me better tracking and it hits a lot nicer. The optimal range, what that does is sort of hyperextend my fall off. It doesn't do a heck of a lot for my optimal range, but the further your fall off is, the higher the DPS that's applied up close. And I mention that because you wouldn't necessarily think to extend your fall off range if you're ratting up close like this. That might be an approach you take if you are ratting 40, 50 kilometers out. But in this case, it works really well. And my weapons of choice sort of reflect that fit as well. So I'm using 800mm autocannons, and I'm also using 2 torpedo launchers. So the range on that caps out at about 17. The nice thing is, if you have a Dreadlord orbiting you at 17 kilometers, the torpedoes still apply. So I guess they're just orbiting at 17 and the torpedoes can still hit. I was a little worried at first when I was fitting this that I wouldn't be able to hit them at all, but that wasn't the case. This video is actually a perfect example of the fit and what I'm talking about, because I'm actually not ratting that well in this video. I'm, letting my curators get pretty close to death. As you can see, they're kind of, they're pretty much into structure. Wasn't really paying that close attention. I'm using T1 curators. I'm not even using Imperial Navy curators or T2 curators. And I'd say a good third of my shots with my torpedoes aren't applied either, because I just let them keep running out, and it takes a little bit while for them to cycle and for them to land. And at that point, most of the battleships had already been destroyed before the last torpedo hit. So I had a lot of wasted shots. But really, that's perfect, because despite ratting not that effectively and efficiently, I still end up making a fair bit of ISK. This wave of rats is worth noting because this is the only time in a Forsaken hub that you'll actually be scrammed or disrupted and unable to warp away. So what you'll want to do is just destroy the frigates as quickly as you can with your drones, and then you're only vulnerable for 30 seconds or so. I should also probably mention the fact that you do not need to overheat your repper with this setup. I'm doing it in the video just for shits and giggles, but no, you do not need to overheat in order to stay alive. As you'll see by the end of the video, I have more than enough cap boosters to have sustained just a normal repping power, so don't worry too much about that. I was pretty cavalier with the repper, so don't take that to heart. And the next wave is kind of noteworthy as well, and you'll see in just a second the battleships and frigates that spawn. The frigates end up spawning pretty close to your ship and burn away from you for a while. So their transversal is actually 0 or close to it for a little while. And what you can actually do is use your drones, obviously, to take out the frigates, but you can actually shoot the frigates with your guns as well and take them out in just a shot or two. This isn't a particularly good clip to demonstrate that. It takes them a little bit to sort of find their bearings, but eventually they do sort of their transversal does drop. So I did start shooting frigates a little while into this, but it's an excellent way to sort of get the get your light drones off the field a little quicker and get your curators or heavy drones back onto the field and apply maximum DPS as quick as possible. At this point, I notice the the tick has passed, and so we made 24 million and change just in about 20 minutes of ratting. So that's for a T1 battleship, that's a pretty darn good tick. That's kind of right up there with a rattlesnake. So yeah, so there you have it, folks. This is my my ratting video. I hope you found it interesting. If not, well, that's your problem, and you're a terrible person.